Okay, you can begin.
Well, good evening, sir and class. Firstly, allow me to apologize for the little technical delays. My group and I, Delisha and Makaya, and myself, Anuradha, will be presenting Chapter 12, Leadership, Power, and Influence. So these are the topics and the general overview of each topic, and now we will go on to the first one, which is transformational leadership. So now we're going to get into transformational leadership. So, transformational versus transactional leadership. So, what is transformational leadership? This is a style of leadership that is carried out by a leader who possesses the certain qualities, values, and beliefs that foster or that contributes to change in both the followers and the organization's vision, processes, and culture. And an example of this is the CEO of Microsoft, Mr. Satya Nadella. Although we would not have touched on the charismatic leadership, just something important to note is that transformational leadership style aims to engage its followers, while the charismatic leadership style aims to instill submission into their followers. Next slide. So now we're going to understand the meaning of transactional leadership. Now, this is a leadership style that is defined as the exchange, hence the name transaction. So it is the exchange between the leader and the follower. The leader understands the desires of the followers and outlines how they can be fulfilled if the follower observes the needs of the company, such as meeting goals and objectives. An example of a transactional leader is the co founder of Microsoft, and that is Bill Gates. He focused on the structure of the company and set specific goals. He also implemented penalty and reward systems for his employees. Next slide. Right. So, as I would have mentioned earlier, charismatic leadership. Now, this is the leadership style, which is the ability to connect on an emotional level as a leader with the followers. Hence, the points of submission onto their followers. These leaders guide through a professional approach, motivating and inspiring their followers. An example is Mahatma Gandhi. We also know that to every aspect there's a pro and a con, and this is the black hat of charisma. This explains the challenges, the weakness, and risk of engaging in charismatic leadership. For example, the leader is only focused on their needs and has no actual desire to make any necessary changes, or the leader does not trust in the abilities of their followers. Next slide. So, according to all the names that I would have given, and also in terms of the black hat charismatic leader, we also have a well known person, which is Adolf Hitler, and the rest is as mentioned before. Next slide.
Moving on to power and influence. Power is defined as the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence others to bring out a desired outcome, while influence can be described as the effect a person's actions have on someone else's behaviors, beliefs, attitudes, actions, or values. So it's safe to say that power is based on a person's positional authority while influence relies on relationships and interactions with others. So now we have the types of leader power. The types of leader power can be defined into two categories. So we can have position power and personal power. So position power would include legitimate power, reward power, and coercive power, while personal power refers to both expert and referent power. So first we look at position power. So position power is formally appointed and recognized authority. It can be defined as the ability and right to influence and direct others based on one's position associated with one's power associated with their formal position. As I said before, position power is formally established. That being said, let's move on to the three types of position power. First, we have legitimate power. So this is the authority granted from a formal position in an organization. So an example of this would be an employee given a managerial position. So the employee would act as a manager in the organization and be acknowledged as such. Next, we have reward power. This is a power that a leader possesses that allows them to reward others. This reward can act as an incentive to improve. An example of this would be a boss giving an employee a raise or a bonus. And lastly, we have coercive power. Now, this is the opposite to reward power, as the leader would utilize threats of punishment to force compliance with their demands. An example of this would be a boss threatening to fire or demote an employee if a quota is not met. Moving on to personal power. Personal power can be defined as the ability to impact or influence someone with your skills, behaviors, attitudes, or mannerisms. Unlike position power, personal power is not formally established, so a major factor in personal power is self-awareness. The leader themselves has to be aware of their strengths, weaknesses, and the influence that they have on others. Now we would look at the two types of personal power. The first type of personal power is expert power. Now, this power involves having an expertise in a specific area and being confident to share it with others. So, this power is related to a person's skill level and knowledge. Expert power allows someone to guide others and help them make informed decisions. An example of this could be a child wanting to tie their shoelaces, but they haven't quite grasped how. So the child may go to a parent who can teach and guide them on how to tie their shoelaces properly. In this scenario, the parent has the skill and the expertise to help their child. Next is referent power. This is a type of power that comes from the leader's likability. The ability to influence comes from the people's fondness and respect for the leader, and even from interpersonal relationships. This type of power should sound a bit familiar because it's often a type of power that is possessed by charismatic leaders. Now that we've looked at the types of leader power, let's look at some of the responses to power being used. We have three responses. The first and most desirable response is commitment. Here, the person not only agrees with the leader, but they also actively support the decision and enthusiastically obey. Second, we have compliance. The person may not necessarily agree with the leader, but they obey regardless. And lastly, there's resistance. Here, a person does not agree with the leader. They don't want to perform whatever task was required, so they refuse. In some cases, a person may go so far as to attempt to sabotage the leader. Now we look at the role of dependency. Dependency can be directly linked to power. The more dependent that someone is, so the more they rely on someone, is the more power that the person they are depending on has over them. Dependency can be caused by the control of resources in an organization. These resources could include things such as jobs, rewards, financial support, and even information. So let's talk a little more about control over resources. There are three factors to mention when talking about control over resources. The first is importance. This looks at the resource's value. If a resource is seen as unimportant, it will be deemed undesirable, and as a result, it won't help create any dependency. Next, we look at how scarce something is, how difficult it is to obtain. The more difficult a resource is to obtain, is the more valuable the resource is. And of course, with an increasing value of a resource, it could entice someone to work harder to achieve it. And lastly, we have non substitutability, which, as the name suggests, it deals with how easily available a resource is to substitute. If there are no substitutes available, the lack of an alternative would increase dependency. Now, our next point is the sources of leader power in organizations. So we have interdepartmental dependency. This looks at the flow of resources through an organization, well, via various departments. When the resources flow in one direction, the leader of the department that receives the resources has less power than the leader who provides said resources. You can think of it as the resources going down a chain. Next, there's control over information. Control over information is an important factor for leaders in an organization, and by extent, a great source of power, as the leaders, as it is the leader's choice, not only to to distribute the information, but also decide what information to share and to choose how to share it. Third is centrality. Organization centrality refers to the extent of the leader's role in the organization. It tends to be associated with power because it reflects the leader's contributions to the organization. And last is coping with uncertainty. In turbulent environments, many rapid changes occurring would lead to inevitable uncertainty. Leaders who are able to smoothly navigate this change and cope with this uncertainty increase their power in their departments or organizations because persons will look to them for guidance.
Now we will dive into increasing power through political activity. So, what is politics? Politics is the opportunity to attain, develop, and use power and other resources to obtain a desired future outcome. Politics also occurs within organizations. Organizational politics is the actions leaders take to increase their power and influence for the purpose of achieving their objectives within a company. Next slide. So this diagram shows the factors that influence political behaviors. And we have the individual factors such as high self-monitors, internal focus of control, organizational investments, expectation of success. We have organizational factors, reallocation of resources, promotion opportunities, low trust, role ambiguity, to name a few. And we have the favorable outcomes, which is reward and averted punishments. So, increasing power through political activity, and there are some political strategies that are taken to increase power. So, we have control and minimizing uncertainty. So, managers can minimize the number of sudden issues or events that may arise in the firm, and this elevates their power. Secondly, we have becoming irreplaceable. This occurs through the collection of valuable qualities and knowledge that is rarely identified. This makes a leader stand out from others. Thirdly, possess a position that holds authority. So, in other words, being centralized. So, managers have the authority to take part and make decisions in all affairs of the company. Fourthly, gathering the resources. So, managers accumulate both the human and financial capital that is necessary. And lastly, building relations. So, developing strong interpersonal connections that can be beneficial to the organization. Next slide.
Here are some tactics for ascertain leader influence. Number first one is develop allies, use rational persuasion, make people like you, rely on the rule of reciprocity, ask for what you want, remember the principle of scarcity, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. So, the first one to develop allies, focus on building strong relationships through effective communication, empathy, collaboration, and consistency, while allies actively participate in networking and seeking opportunities to support others. Here are 5 tips you can follow to build alliances. Be supportive, nurture your allies, communicate effectively, don't ask for too much, don't take offense. Second, we use rational persuasion. Rational persuasion is a simple tactic. It combines the request of the pressure approach with logical arguments supporting the request. With the rational persuasion tactic, leaders use logical arguments and factual evidence to show that a request is feasible and relevant to reaching important objectives. For example, when a politician explains that taxes need to be raised in order for school children to have new book supplies. So, number three, make people like you. Make people like you to build a positive image and exert leader influence. Focus on genuine connection, active listening, and demonstrating empathy to foster trust and respect, which naturally leads to people liking and following you. So, show genuine interest in team members' lives and listen actively by remembering small personal details like the birthday or hobbies that they like to do. Number four, the rule of reciprocity. Rely on the rule of reciprocity. By embracing reciprocity, leaders can foster warm cohesion, encourage collaborative efforts, and cultivate a deep sense of trust within their teams and organization. It is about nurturing a culture where acts of support, kindness, and assistance are constantly acknowledged, valued, and reciprocated. So, do meaningful favors for team members without expecting anything in return. For instance, a leader might stay up late to help an employee meet a deadline. Number five, ask for what you want. Ask for what you want. Requesting is when the leader uses simple demands to get others to take action. Requesting means gaining the commitment of the people you lead by making a direct statement of what you want and by asserting your position confidently and certainly. Principle of scarcity. Remember, the principle of scarcity means that people usually want more of what they can't have. Leaders can learn to frame their requests or offer in such a way as to highlight the unique benefits and exclusive information being provided. Number 7, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. So, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. This final principle for asserting authority is the leader's legitimate authority in the organization. Research has found that the key to successful use of formal authority is to be acknowledgeable, credible, and trustworthy. Effective leaders keep the 6 previous influence principles in mind, realizing that influence depends on personal rather than position power. Next, we move on to ethical consideration in using power and politics. Ethical consideration in politics involves using power responsibly, prioritizing the public need and upholding ethical principles of fairness, transparency, and accountability, while recognizing the potential for conflict between personal and political morality. Anyone have any questions? Okay, so now we will move on to a multiple choice quiz. Question 1. Sarah is the owner of Sarah Boutiques. She mainly focuses on the goals and objectives of the company, taking whatever decisions necessary to achieve them. What leadership style is Sarah portraying? Anybody could answer. Anybody want to guess? Okay, so the answer is C, transactional leadership style. So the next question is, which of the following is not a reaction to use of power? So it have A, commitment, B, reflection, C, compliancy, D, resistance. Anybody?
Is it A, commitment?
No, sorry. Anybody else?
Is it resistance?
No, sorry. The answer is B, reflection. Question 3. Resource control has no effect on dependency. Is it A, false, B, true? Anyone?
False.
That's correct. So false is the answer. Question 4. Developing allies is tactics of a certain leader influence. Is it A, true, or B, false? Anybody? Okay, so the answer is true. Right, so this is the end of our presentation. Thank you guys for listening. Enjoy the rest of your evening.